I give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Diane Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it?
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. How are you? You can see my background has changed.
Yes, yes.
A wooden
back
body.
on the island.
Happy to be here.
How does that feel? How does that
fantastic.
feel?
It feels wonderful. I love being here. It really does make a whole difference. It really does.
Good. I'm glad. So,
and how are you? What's going on in your world?
What's going on in my world? Well, I had a super busy weekend, so I'm feeling a little need to recover from the busy weekend. All good stuff, but just nonstop. So, but one of the things that happened to me over the weekend, I have a little storytelling to share today. One of the things that happened over the weekend was that I had a friend of mine who happens to be a Black woman break up with me over the weekend.
Black person breakup.
Yep.
So tell me all about it. What's on?
So this particular person, and I might have mentioned this to you, but it is a she. I'll at least say that. I'm not going to share who she is or where she is, but she's been kind of distant from me probably in the last 6 to 9 months or so. I had occasions to be close to where she was, and we're reaching out and going, hey, let's try to get together for lunch, and either no response or finally response days later saying, sorry, I missed you or whatever. And my gut was telling me that that she was distancing herself from me. Mm-hmm. And so in my whiteness, I went through this whole gyration of, is she trying to distance herself? Am I making too much of it? Is she just a busy human? Which of course we all are, and all of the things, and trying very hard not to put more burden of labor on her. I have just said, you know what? She knows where I am. If she wants to get a hold of me, she will. And so I reached out again because I had occasion to invite her to join me for something. And I had a feeling she was going to say no, but I thought, I haven't been told she's ready to, to break up yet. So I'm not going to jump to that conclusion. And she came back and said, thank you for inviting me, but I'm going to have to decline. And then maybe a few hours later, she sent another text that said, we're good. This isn't anything really about you in particular, but I've made a decision that I need to separate myself from relationships, and you're one of those relationships. So I'm sorry, but we're done. And it put me in all the white tears meter was, it put me in all the feels. I did respond to her fairly quickly and said, thank you. I wish you the best in all of your life endeavors. And that's pretty much all I said. And she came back and said, thank you. I to you as well. And that was it. And then for about 24 hours, my white head was spinning like a top.
So first of all, I mean, I'm laughing just because of the, spinning head. And I'm curious about whether or not it's a whiteness thing, because I'm thinking in this moment, first of all, thank you for sharing, because I imagine that, I heard you say that there's a whole bunch of feels that go along with it. So thank you for being vulnerable and being able to share. But then I'm also thinking, I'm wondering how I would be in responsiveness to a friend of mine breaking up with me, 1, 2, and if they were somebody that was Black identified, if I would take that into consideration from the separation. So those are some of the things that are going through my head in my responsiveness as I'm moving around. But what did you need from this relationship? That's what I'm curious about. And how do you feel about the breakup? Maybe that's the first question to ask. is like, how are you feeling? Like, what were some of those things that went on over those 24 hours? I heard whiteness meter. I heard a little tears.
Yeah. Sadness, definitely sadness. This is a person who I've known for about 11 years, and our relationship has been, we never were super close. I was always definitely kept at arm's length, and rightly so. I mean, I developed my friendship with her in the very early days of my awakening, as I've mentioned it here in episodes before. So my waking up to my whiteness and my beginning of unpacking the whiteness that I was indoctrinated into and how that translates into my behavior and my possible harm to others. And so that's kind of the context of our relationship. It wasn't like super, super close. It was definitely, I've learned a lot from her. She has been one of my biggest teachers in unpacking my whiteness. If I were to be honest, I'm sure it maybe didn't feel like a totally reciprocal. She and I had some conversations early on after I moved away from where she was living, and I was supportive of her and listening to what she was going through, and there was a back and forth. That was probably the most reciprocal part of our period of time in our relationship. So do I feel like she maybe felt like it was more of an extractive relationship where I was the student and she was the teacher, and and it wasn't necessarily the other way around? Probably. If I were to, I'm not going to speak for her, but so yeah, so that's where the sadness came in, is that, and that's where why I was kind of ascribing it my whiteness and how I was processing it, because I was like, what did I do wrong? Did I cause harm? Maybe I'm not a good white person, because she just broke up with me basically saying, I don't want to have relationships with white women because I don't trust them. And so see ya. I totally get that she doesn't trust me. I understand that. And, intellectually, I get it. And I honor the fact that she felt like she could say that to me instead of just ghosting me. I appreciate that. But then I was second guessing whether or not I caused her unnecessary labor, to force her to say, I'm breaking up with you instead of just ghosting. So yeah, that's what I mean by the head was swirling.
Yeah, the thoughts came in.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just curious if you can restate what she said in the breakup text. You said that she was like, it has nothing to do with you. It's okay. I've just made a decision in my life. Yeah. That there are certain relationships I'm not going forward with, and this is one of the relationships.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't need like specific receipts, but I'm curious in going from that, which she kind of clearly states, to all of the thought processes that you had. Mm-hmm. I'm curious about what the progression is from. I appreciate the honesty of what the person's capacity is, even though it causes impact. There's still like some just like black and whiteness about the fact that she said it has nothing to do with you. It's just that I'm in my life in a stage where there's certain people I'm not going to move forward with, and you're one of those people. How did that then translates into lack of trust? I'm really trying to uncover what the thought process is and what that thought process might be for other people who have relationships with folks that are not identified in the same ethnicity, or if you choose race. Right. You know what I mean? I'm trying to identify that part of it.
Yeah, which is why I thought this would be a good conversation to have here, not because I want to center myself and I want to, I have to be honest, full disclosure, there was a moment I wanted to reach out to you, and I stopped myself because I was trying to get clear on what my motives were. What did I want from you in that moment? And what I wanted from you was to convince me that I was not this horrible white person that needed to be broken up with. Just full transparency. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted.
If you need that type of affirmation, you're not a horrible white person. But I also was not receiving that from that text, So that's the other part of it. Like, I was not receiving, I think that you're a horrible or whatever. I don't even
No,
hear
and
there was much tension in relationship in the text.
right. I'm aware that I'm also, the knowledge that I'm bringing to her breakup text is informed by some stories that she posted on IG where she said out loud before we had this interaction, where she said out loud in her stories that she was wanting to break up, that she needed to separate herself and from relationships with white women in particular, because she doesn't trust us, we're not safe, and she needs to separate. So that all happened before I got my text from her. So I'm aware that seeing those stories informed and filled in some of the gaps for me in getting this breakup text. Had I not seen those stories before and had just gotten this breakup text,
That makes sense. Okay.
I don't know that I would have had that full picture to like fill in the gaps and go, oh, she's breaking up with me because I'm a white woman she doesn't feel safe with. And
did you engage those texts to identify some of the experiences that she was having, or like did she communicate more information about the experiences that she was having? Just a blanket statement, and then there was no response in her chat.
I didn't want to ask her. I mean, I know her well enough to know that in the text that I guess I could read it. It's not, I mean, it's very generic. There's no telling information in terms of revealing who she is. And I don't know that I would be speaking out of turn. It's actually a very beautifully written text. As breakups go, it's
it's one of the lovely breakups.
It's a lovely breakup. But I purposely just answered back and said, thank you. I wish you all the best in your life. I wasn't going to ask, well, what did I do? And that's what I wanted to do. That was the first compulsion was, what did I do to deserve this? Had I not seen her stories before this and knew that she was making the choice to separate herself from white women in particular, I might have felt more compelled to say, well, what did I do? So I had enough context before I saw this that helped me know almost full circle without even hearing it from her that this was the context with which she was making this decision. So no, I didn't reach out and ask, what did I do she basically says it's not you, it's me in the text. And again, the reason I wanted to talk about this on here was because I wonder how many white women have gone through a circumstance like this. Maybe not everybody gets this lovely breakup text. Maybe they just get ghosted and they wonder why this person's disappeared. I don't know. I thought it might be revealing to at least like share what I went through and getting this and then processing through it and how intentional I was. I mean, the impulse was so strong to reach out to you and I didn't do it. And I'm proud of myself for not doing it.
Well, we're friends, so you can always reach out.
We are.
Right.
But I also I'm very cognizant of the fact that I don't want to put you in the position of being,
But I've said this to you before. If you would reach out to your other friends and it didn't have anything to do with race or ethnicity or any of those things, then reach out to your friends regardless of that. So that's number one, regardless of that, right? Because then your friends can tell you what's in their capacity. I'm your friend, and if I'm like, girl, I don't have no capacity to be working with you and your mind worried about this woman, or I'm like, let me listen. or I'm gonna be like, let me listen, let me hear what you need. And friends, in my opinion, should be in that stance of let me listen, let me hear what you need. And that was one of the questions I asked at the beginning. Besides the person being very supportive during the time when you were having more expanded awareness about existence, what was it that you would have wanted or needed from that relationship?
If I'm honest, in the early days, I wanted her to like me and accept me as proof that I was a good white woman.
Okay.
Because she was so very clear about, I think the first time I actually was in proximity with her, she was doing a workshop about whiteness and about the harmfulness of it. And, and so she was in that space where she was a very honest person who expressed herself very clearly about how she was not going to be, the black friend who's going to pat you on the back and make you feel better about yourself.
Mhm.
And I appreciated that. I liked that. And I wanted to be friends with her. And we had some bonding experiences. I mean, we had an experience where she was verbally assaulted by a white woman in my presence. And I got in between her and the white woman and escorted the white woman out of the building because she didn't feel safe. And we had some really intense experiences together. And so there's a part of me that I feel like we went through all of that together, and yet you're still breaking up with me because I'm a white woman and you don't feel safe. And I'm like, well, fuck, what is it that I could do to be a safe white woman? And maybe in relationship with her, there is nothing I can do, because this is about her doing what she needs to do to feel safe. And it doesn't matter what I want. Again, this is why I wanted to talk about it out loud on here, because I feel like there might be lots of white people out there that might have experienced some level of this. And I feel like it comes with being aware of my whiteness and how it impacts people that are non-white as I move through space. And I have these conversations with my husband as well. And he's like, but you can talk to me about anything. And then just like what you were saying, but I'm your friend. And I'm like, I know, but I feel like I feel like I'm asking for labor that I shouldn't be asking for. So all those gyrations go through my head.
Mm-hmm. So what is the thought that I'm having in my mind is first understanding that I wanted to say the relationship with this woman is the affirmation. For me, I'm observing it as the affirmation of, you're a real one.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So in the beginning of your relationship, did you get that affirmation? And is there some emptiness, like since there's a breakup, that you might not have that affirmation from this person in particular?
No. I mean, I think that's probably what I was seeking in the beginning, in the early days. And based on what, some experiences that we went through together, and when I moved away from where she was living and we had conversations still on the phone, I thought that was validation that we were going to be able to take our relationship to a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe my leaving that space made it easier for her to feel like she could communicate with me. And then, so yeah, and I was hoping that the relationship would go to another level. But it never seemed to manifest. So
do you have an idea of like what she might have been getting out of the relationship with you? Did you ever have an opportunity to talk about that, or in any of the engagements you had?
I mean, when I moved away and we had phone conversations and she was sharing with me about some of the things that she was still going through, I felt like that was a way to reciprocate, just to hold space for her, to be there to listen, to reflect back, what I was hearing. And I was excited about the possibility of wanting to give back, because I'd wanted to give back to her. She had given me so much. I wanted to give back to her in all the time that we'd been friends together, but never really quite knowing what I could give back, maybe that's because we never got to a place where she felt like she could reveal to me what she needed. And, so I'm aware that it's possible. I'm aware that it's possible that we had two very different interpretations about what this relationship was and wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. Right. Because you're two totally different people. And if there was never an opportunity to talk about like the benefits of what people are receiving out of a friendship, that can be the case. And especially when you come into friendship in a way that might have intention and not just a little bit of being naturally organic, right? Like you met this person at a time. There was a need that she was filling for you in particular. And what I'm hearing is that as she was fulfilling that need, from the context of her texts, from the contents of her posts and everything like that, that she might have felt overcapacitated by the amount of relationships that she had acquired from whatever work she was doing, how you saw the presentation, from books that she's written or whatever, is pulling in a demographic of people that overcapacitates her. So I do appreciate the movement of her being able to take space for herself. And
Yeah, me too.
and I also believe in the it's not you, it's me. That's the space where the truth is. Where it holds for whatever our minds do with the thought process of what did I do? Am I part of this group of white women that you feel like you can't trust? That's never any, it would be really hard to think about getting some resolve for that.
Yeah.
If the things in the relationship that you experienced were met, if you feel like you were able to feel like you reciprocated, that the needs that you had were met, regardless of her being identified as a Black woman, that's just general relationship things. And I think I'm having a difficult time because I have a diversity of people from different ethnicities that I'm in relationship with. And I am really curious. I don't think of the only place I guess I do question. I guess the only place that I do question the truth of relationships would be with white identified people. Like, like, yeah. So like, if, as you're saying it and like, we're having this conversation and thinking about trust, and I'm like, are there times where I'm in relationship and friendship with people and that are new, not for folks that I know from like childhood that are like white identified, because I grew up with you. So I know you like as family. So that's like a little bit different, but yeah. I would wonder like what the truth and the intention of relationship, because I guess so much harm has gone forward and it would be something to think about. But I also am thinking of, in the experience, if there is something that has happened that might have happened because somebody has a different cultural identity, that would be addressed directly. Like if you've done something to harm me, like not you, and I'm talking about in the general you.
Sure.
If there's been some type of harm or something like that, I'm like, I'm not so sure about. And it's predicated on the fact that you're doing something like that's white culture, that you just do because you're white culture, you're gonna know about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yo, you did that thing that you did was just outside of what is acceptable to me. I have a perfect example of that. I have a friend here on the island who is of Jamaican descent, but is a very white-skinned human being looking.
Okay.
So browner or darker Jamaicans will call this person a white man, but he does things that he would not be seen as a white man to white people. He would look like a Black man to white people, but to Black people, that type of thing.
Okay.
But also he has what in my community would talk about as white cultured things. He has white cultured behaviors. And so when he and I are having a conversation, because I come from a different context, I could be like, I know you've had an experience as a Black man, but for people who don't have that context of understanding, when you do these certain behaviors that show like oppression, that show that you think that you're better than someone, or show that you think that somebody's not ever going to be as intelligent as you, that is things that we attribute to white culturedness. And so even though you will have a Black experience because you have these behaviors, in this context, you're going to be considered white because you have white cultured behaviors.
Got it.
And in those instances, that's being pointed out. Your white cultured behaviors, or this thing that is outside of what would be traditionally comfortable in our community, and that would cause a pushback. I really believe that your friend was so open in what capacity was, more than any human being has done anything to personally offend me. It's more like I don't have the capacity to take on all the labor of the types of relationships that are intentional relationships. More than anything.
Yeah. No, it's been, I don't know, 3 days since the breakup. And the first 24 hours was the worst for me in terms of just the swirl that was going on in my head. I definitely feel like I've gotten to a place where it's like I can let it go. But I was observing the different stages that I went through in getting to that place where I could let it go.
Mhm.
And I wondered if it would be interesting to talk about here because you're right. I mean, I think this could apply to any relationship, but I
Yes.
think it also, as a white identified woman, I think it, and she being a Black woman, and all that that carries with it, and maybe if I wasn't so actively working on unpacking all of this stuff, it wouldn't even occur to me. Maybe if
Mhm.
it yeah, maybe I could see a space that my head could be in where she just was like, I can't, I need to move on, or not even. I mean, I've had white women. I'm sitting here thinking about it. I've had white women that have ghosted me, that have disappeared on me, and I know that that's pretty much, you know, they're done, and it does not impact me the same way by any
Mm.
stretch of the
Okay.
imagination. I'm thinking about two people in particular when I moved up here that I started to develop, friendships. They're actually, cousins,
Mhm.
and and slowly but surely, you know, I've gone a whole year and haven't spoken to them. They show up and they go, "Look, what have you been up to?" And it's like one of them didn't even recognize me. She saw me out on the street
Wow.
and looked right at me and didn't even recognize me. And I'm
Mhm.
like, and I've said all along, it's like I'm just not their cup of tea. I mean, I got up here that we have history because we've known each other all our lives, and then they were hanging around me and spending time with me, and I was me, and they were like, I'm not down with that. So
Mhm.
off they went. And I could care less. It's like, if you don't want to be around me because you don't like the way I move through space and call life what it is, then I don't want to spend my time in that anyway. So yeah, I think I've had a very different response to white
Mhm.
people ghosting me than this
Mhm.
particular human. So
But it might also be because it might be easier to identify the reasons why, right? Because there's like similarities of culture and
mm,
understanding where you're just like, you know, I know whatever you're dealing with. I'm thinking that this conversation is particularly important because I always like to look at like how we are reflecting on ourselves and our
mm,
behaviors, and what does that look like on a larger scale when we like start going outside of our internal rings to our more social rings. And right now, if folks, if we're considering and thinking about war, right, and thinking about how people are engaging with each other, how relationships are organic versus
mm,
intentional, versus
mm,
strategic, and what it is that we're doing to make sure that we are thinking about the capacity of the other. And I'm trying to extrapolate this into a more global context of how we relate.
mhm.
And the fact that the communication between you and your friend in this breakup was clear, was direct, was kind of immediate, like in responsiveness, like time didn't like have to linger, so that you could at least know where she was. What I am hearing in a lack, which would be some of like the sources that we could think of in remedying some of like the tense relationships, or even like aggressive relationships that we have on a war like context, would be there's this missing piece in this closing of this relationship where you are not having the opportunity to respond about the impact of having this breakup, like recognizing and
Yeah.
respecting this person's capacity, and then you saying, okay, thank you for letting me know, and being able to add, this is what the relationship was for me, this is what the impact was for me, and this is how I'm feeling about you breaking up. And it be that too, but you being able to say your piece about
Yeah, I
where you're
wouldn't want
from.
to I wouldn't want to burden her with that.
And you feel like that is a burden, which is
Mhm.
fair.
I
And
wouldn't
then,
want to put that extra labor on her.
yeah, is it labor, is it just communication? Right? Because would you be asking for a response, or is it, and this is something that I would need. I would need to be like, the completion for me would be saying, okay, this is how I'm impacted by this decision. Not that the decision has to change. I'm just letting you know so I can release it and let it go. And maybe it doesn't have to be directly to the person, but it would be somewhere. It would be in a piece of poetry. It would be writing. It would be talking about it on the pod. It would be somewhere where I release what the impact of the loss of this relationship is for me, so that I could place it into something to nurture and grow someplace else. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a part of me that doesn't feel like I'm owed that.
For
Doesn't feel
yourself.
like, yeah.
So how do
Yeah.
you take care of yourself in relationships with non-white people?
I'm in therapy.
Okay. There you have it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I started going to therapy, was because I kept hearing from non-white people, specifically Black women, don't burden us with we don't want to hear about your white tears. We don't want to hear about, we don't got time for that. And which I got, I understood that. But as you're just expressing, I had all of this, all of this feeling that I didn't know what to do with. And so many of my close friends that I would think to pick up the phone and say, hey, can we process this, are Black women. And so, I mean, I've had this dialogue with, the woman that I call my spiritual mom. She is a Black woman, and she's always fussing at me that why can't you can call me and talk to me about these things. And I'm like, I don't feel like I can. So I was talking to a Black woman one time who was saying to me, she's like, I hear what you're saying, and I wonder if maybe some therapy would be helpful for you, so that you do have a place to process this stuff, because you can't just like bottle it all up and expect it to not go somewhere and cause possible harm, either to myself or to somebody else inadvertently, because eventually it'll just all spill out. So yes, I'm in therapy to manage all of that.
No, that's real. That's real. But like, and for me, it's making me recognize that as each of us are identifying the ways that we take care of ourselves, which is crucial, because it's harder to engage and develop relationships where we can take care of others, in my thought process and opinion, if we're not in our own like healing and okayness. I am so curious as to how many white folks, and now I'm going to a place of white males and thinking about the psychosis that it feels like we're experiencing with the current administration and the leadership across the United States of this needing to have a place to work things out with your own understanding of yourself, because you're in the reflection of how many people have been impacted by you. Let me say that a different way. White men having a reaction to the fact that they're feeling attacked about, about the harm that people have caused that they might not have been aware of, or most of the time having been aware of it, but still being called in on the amount of harm that has occurred for 250 years of the establishment of the United States. And like, you know what I mean? And being held accountable to that. And how are you working through that? It's not being worked through healthily, unfortunately, to the rest of the non-white people. But what happens when you don't work through those things, when you don't go to therapy, when you don't start talking about what the impacts of it, then the harm becomes so much greater. And that is how I'm seeing us having this little conversation about a personal relationship, how we can see that it can have a really great effect when people on an individual level don't work through these things and need some place to respond to when they feel attacked.
Yeah, that was part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this on here, because I guess my message to other white, especially white women who maybe have experienced this before, or are in any kind of relationship with a non-white, especially woman, especially Black woman, in a close relationship, how it is important for us to be able to process what we're feeling, and how do we create a space where we can do that where we're not placing the burden on our non-white friends for patting us on the back or making us feel, it's a, I think processing it and looking for validation so that we don't have to deal with the feelings that we're feeling are two kind of different things. And I don't,
That is it.
I don't know. I stopped myself from calling you because I was afraid that the second part of that was what I was searching for. And maybe in the first
Validation.
24 hours, I probably was the validation that I'm not a bad one. I'm not a bad white woman that it's you, not, it's her, not me. It's, all of those things in the first 24 hours. That's what my feelings needed. And so I sat on it and didn't call you and didn't reach out. But I think it's important, I'm not saying any of this for any kind of validation about that process either, but I want white people to hear this and to know, because you're right, when white men don't get to process these feelings, they pick up guns and go kill, masses of people. And so
yes, they do.
you've said this how many times? You've said this before. When white people are uncomfortable, others die. And so thank you for
of course
helping me process this. And
thank you for modeling this conversation. And there's like so much things to be insightful for, because, from a restorative position, yes, it is really important for people to call out what their needs are. And then also for us to be thinking about what the impact is. Because what I was hearing is this narrative and conversation about, okay, white people being responsible for themselves and the harm that they cause and their own reflection. But then that doesn't mean to be so extremist, where it's important to be considering the impact on the other people, but not to the point where it cuts down opportunities to be in communication with each other. Because you do need to have some understanding of what you're reflecting on, or you do become an echo chamber. And so when there is closeness of relationships that you trust within yourself, like an Elena or like a me or some, I'm naming people now, but like when you actually have the truth of relationship, or like family, like bonded relationships, where you can go to that person and say, look, just exhale. I need to talk to you about this, and not hold the same, this is burdensome on them because the depth of your relationship is different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I appreciate the reminder that I could reach out to you and say, hey, I've got something to process. Do you have capacity for it? And if you didn't, you could say no.
Right.
I mean,
very easily.
Yeah. And would. So that's the,
and who you can do that with. We're not making the suggestion that you do that with every person, but if you have, like, you didn't have a deep relationship with the woman, you had a relationship with her, but it wasn't as deep.
It wasn't deep,
as some other relationships that you do have that are deep. And those relationships it's never going to have the same context of what folks are saying in general to the world, right? Yeah. In general to the world, yeah, man, I'm not going to have a whole bunch of conversations with a whole bunch of white women that I can't trust, that, have caused harm, blah, blah, blah. But I do have my peoples who are my peoples, who I'm going to have different conversations and experiences with them.
And I wasn't one of those people.
Not for her, for that, but you got other folks.
Yeah. And, I think I get hyper focused on if this person doesn't feel like I'm safe, then how am I not being safe to other people in my life that I love, and I get hyper focused that's a good term for me on that. And so, because I'm constantly evaluating my behavior and probably maybe do that too much. I don't know. But I feel like if I don't, then that's where I could cause harm. And so.
And I hear that. And the thing that my brain is saying to me is just be in consciousness of, if it's happening with one person, doesn't necessarily have to generalize to all of the other folks, especially if it's something that you're questioning that's non-whiteness, you know, or that's like black.
Yeah.
Like a black female says, okay, I'm tired of this. Are all black females going to be feeling that way? No, because we're all
No.
autonomous
But
individuals.
my whiteness, but if my whiteness is leaking out onto someone else, the chances are good my whiteness is going to be leaking out to others as well. So no, I'm not generalizing that all black women are going to feel the same way. It's that my whiteness is
what you're doing. Mhm.
It's what I'm doing. It's what
Mhm.
I'm, and so that's where my hypervigilance comes in, which I guess is a good thing, but it's also can also make it challenging for me to like relax into relationships with non-white people
Mhm.
because I'm constantly worried about causing harm. And then do I end up causing harm because I'm constantly worried?
And we don't want a whole bunch of people walking around always not doing something because they think they're causing harm, which is something that I've always heard. Doing DEI work with white folks, they're saying, I'm scared to ask this question. I'm scared to say this thing. I'm scared to do this thing. When you're in a space where you can ask those questions, ask them. When you have a relationship with folks that you know you can have this conversation, say, I need to have this conversation. I recognize that where there might be burden, tell me what your capacity is, but do that. Have the question in those spaces that you feel that you have some type of comfortability. I'm not safety, that's relative, but some places it's comfortable, and or seek out those spaces so that you can answer those questions, because there's still people creating those spaces where, you know, a black person will lead a presentation or some DEI workshop or some group at the library where you can have the conversation and ask the questions that you want to ask, because the environment is created for that to happen.
Thank you for that languaging.
Yeah.
So can I send you the bill?
We're doing it here. This is what we give a fuck about, because we're trying to just make it better.
Yes. I appreciate you for sure.
I appreciate you too. All right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Why do I give a fuck?
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, as you move throughout your day, continue to ask yourself,
Why Do I Give a Fuck is produced in collaboration with Johanna and Diane. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.